Hello, I'm ValPancakes, and joining me tonight on the stack, I have Daniel Makabe. They don't call him the wrestling genius for nothing, and he's been widely regarded as one of the best technical wrestlers in North America. Please help me welcome Daniel Makabe.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thanks.
No. That's a very very kind intro. And I appreciate it. And this is gonna be fun for sure.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad that you wanted to hang out with me and talk and just get into some hopefully interesting introspective conversation. So
I can talk. I have. I will warn you. So
not a problem. Hard same on my side. I never shut up. So
there you go.
this might be a lengthy one. So just first off, how long have you been wrestling?
Uh so I got trained in the summer of 2003. Um, but I haven't been wrestling for 18 years consecutively. Um, there were some periods of inactivity. There were some periods where I was nursing some injuries, where I had other priorities. Um, it's not a secret that I came up in kind of an underground community of backyarders who now make up a good portion of the current independent wrestling climate. Um, and that's honestly led me to a bunch of opportunities. So, of friends that I made along the way. So, there was definitely periods of time where I wasn't working the pro wrestling scene here in the Northwest. Um, but consistently, I'd say I've been working pretty steadily for the last like 6 or 7 years. I've been back kind of in the swing of things. So 18 years, but not really 18 years.
Fair enough. What was your first exposure to wrestling?
My first time ever seeing it was my father took me to watch WrestleMania 7, which is going to date how old I am, probably, roughly at least. And we watched it on closed circuit, which, like, this was before pay per view was readily available, certainly up here in Canada. And I think Canada was the last market to still have closed circuit. Like, that's how the original WrestleManias were available, right? Before we had the capabilities of watching these things in our home, right? So yeah, we watched WrestleMania 7 on closed circuit at the Pacific Coliseum here in Vancouver, on the big screen, and I was instantly addicted. And shortly thereafter, I was watching. Canada was definitely mostly WWF product on television up here. There was some WCW on television, but definitely not as much. And WCW never came uh, to Vancouver to run shows until the year 2000. They ran Vancouver once, ever in the whole history of the company. They only came to Vancouver once. Um, so yeah, pretty quickly thereafter, I was going to WWF house shows, watching all the syndicated television. Yeah, gobbling it up. So from the ripe old age of 6 or 7 years old. So
Right on. So, what was a young Daniel like?
say that again.
What was a young Daniel like?
Young Daniel. Wow. Like, we're talking about young Daniel who's just been exposed to the WWF, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, what was I like? Um, Good question. I don't know. I've always liked I always liked sports. And like a real wide variety of sports. It's kind of fluctuated over the years. Like, now, obviously, I'm a huge soccer fan, as anyone who's seen me wrestle can probably guess. And I'm also a huge baseball fan. But from a young age, I played baseball, I played soccer, I was watching hockey because I was Canadian and that's just a thing we do up here. Um, And so, yeah, I was into sports. Pretty good student, I guess, in school. Really good at math, still to this day. Uh, and I've got a good memory. That's another thing that has always sort of been a thing. Always was really into like statistics and geography, and would just bother my parents endlessly on car trips. I had like an atlas that I would take in the car with me and would be studying all the various capital cities and countries of the world and whatever. So, um, and then yeah, I mean, pretty early on, wrestling took hold. I remember when I was very young, I took gymnastics classes on the weekend, and I took trampoline classes on the weekend, and that would cut into watching wrestling, which I didn't love because like, the classes just happened to be at the same time that it was on television. So it'd be like a race home to watch whatever wrestling was on TV after those classes. But I will thank those classes because I still move pretty well for someone who I'm not a huge individual, but like I'm big for the independence, and so I still move pretty well. And I used to be quite agile when I was like in my 20s. Now not so much, but I've held on to some of that agility. So I thank my parents for putting me in gymnastics and trampoline classes at a young age, even though it cut into watching wrestling. So
Well, I guess it worked out in the end then.
I would say so. I would say so.
So, like, who are your first favorites in wrestling, or what would you consider like your inspirations in wrestling?
Those are two very different things. Because my first favorites were straight up the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan for sure. And as you can tell, I've never really wavered from those things inspiring me in what I do in the ring now. No. Obviously, I eventually my tastes changed as we grow old. Not everyone's taste changed though. But yeah, I think it's kind of a rite of passage growing up in Western Canada that you eventually have to become a Bret Hart fan. It's just kind of logical. It comes with the territory. And he's treated as such in this country as being kind of a larger than life national hero, you know? He's like a national celebrity. So yeah, I think I can. I was thinking about this the other day, and I think we can probably blame Bret Hart for turning me to the dark side of technical wrestling. Um, but as I grew older, I got attracted to a lot of Japanese stuff, a lot of Mexican wrestling, other, technical wrestlers. Dean Malenko was someone when I saw him on WCW. He became kind of an inspiration. My first real like favorite Japanese wrestler was Mitsuharu Misawa, who I still to this day am a huge fan of. And so yeah, that's it has progressed from there to as I was training and getting into working professionally. Brian Danielson was obviously a huge influence still to this day.
So, how did you decide to pursue wrestling?
So I never planned on going pro. Um, it was something where I was backyarding with some school friends, and I was the one who was like really, really into it, and they were just kind of like along for the ride. It was during the Attitude Era, so wrestling was like at its peak popularity, and so even if they really didn't like wrestling, everyone watched it, kind of thing. And but eventually they kind of fell off, and I uh, met some new friends at going to local independent shows who were running a backyard fed on a trampoline in their backyard. And so I ended up just kind of falling in with those guys. And we would run our backyard shows. We eventually built our own rings, which we did for years. And then we started booking with one of the local wrestling schools. We would book their ring once a month to run like our pay-per-views, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we would have like our weekly shows on our homemade rings, literally in like the forest. And then once a month, we would have these big shows in the pro ring that we would book. And we did that for probably a good year. And finally, the guy who ran the school was like, I mean, I'm sure he saw dollar signs, but he's, hey, you guys aren't terrible, I guess. Have you ever considered training and, you know, doing independence or whatever? And so yeah, that summer the three of us, my friends Justin and Scott. Scott is still in the business. He, predominantly just works in Seattle as Big Cat Scott Henson. Justin no longer is in the business, but all three of us got trained that summer and kind of went from there.
So a couple questions. First,
Yes.
what kind of ring did you guys make? Like I've heard I've seen like different backyards where they've done like the mattress thing. I know you mentioned a trampoline, but like how did you like construct your own ring?
So we had
I
two different versions. We did when I first started with them. We actually just used the trampoline and we bought like fence posts and like rope and like made the posts and ropes and everything. That was more just like a cosmetic thing. It's not functioning. So like the classic backyard homemade ring, which like everyone kind of goes through and figures out the best way to do it. Um, we figured out the formula that worked for us, I guess. They typically don't have posts or ropes, right? It's just more of a base that you're having matches on, right? And so you need a lot of tires. You need plywood. You need carpet underlay, which that's typically what the padding in most pro rings is like that kind of thick kind of carpet padding. And then you need some tarps and then some duct tape. And that's kind of the gist of it. The best ring that we ever made, I don't know where, like, I know we didn't pay for any of this. Like, we maybe paid for the tarps and the wood, but the tires, we would typically go to like local, like automotive shops, just ask them for old tires that they were throwing out. And the best ring that we ever made it was 7x7 stacked too high with each quadrant of 4 stacks taped all together so they wouldn't shift and they would all kind of adhere together. So 7x7 times 2, that's 98 tires. I don't know how we picked up 98. We didn't drive. Maybe one or two of us drove, and we somehow managed to get that many tires and build it. And we probably built, oh God, in the span of like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, we probably had to build 4 or 5 rings because the city kept taking it. So like, I don't know. Sometimes I think people would claim that we were on their property. Sometimes it was the city claiming it was city property. But yeah, we had lots of rings torn down, and we just built them. So,
like that's like it just shows so much dedication to something that you're just gonna keep like picking up tires and like building
Yep.
rings and just
Yep.
keep going.
Yep.
So I assume that people like came to these, like your classmates or whatever, right? Or was it just like purely for your own enjoyment?
Occasionally, someone would invite like a non-wrestling friend or like a schoolmate, but typically it was just like the backyarders having shows for each other. And that never really changed, even to the point where like we started to travel and have these big kind of like summits of like backyarders from all over the place. it was not for a paying audience. It was like you would have your match and then you would watch all the other matches, which honestly was kind of the genesis of Beyond Wrestling. And that was the theme of their show a couple weeks ago, which I know you were at, because we both were firsthand to some interesting characters who were
Oh,
also.
that was
Um,
kind of you to say.
that's
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna be polite. But yeah, that's how Beyond started. Was kind of like people who came up in that scene who had subsequently gone trained and were doing pro stuff, but it was kind of just pro shows for pros by pros. You know, that's kind of the idea of it. So
I mean, it's not really much. Like, I mean, it's a little bit different, but still, it's just like the boys trying to pop boys in the back anyway. So.
yes, although I will say that I watched. I mean, when I was backyarding, I would watch every single match on a show, and now I don't know if I have too many like superstitions or too many, not superstitions, but just routines, I guess. That if you're before me on a show, I'm probably not watching your match. And if you're after me, like I need a period of time to like cool down, and then I will go and watch the remainder of the show. So, but on most shows that I'm on, like I maybe see the main event, and if I am the main event, then I'm not seeing anything. So
I suppose you got to prepare for your own match and do your own thing.
yeah, I don't know. I just like to I stretch a lot, uh, and I also like the other kind of secret is without glasses, I'm like very very blind. Um, and so I typically will take my glasses off like a match or two before my match, just to try and kind of train myself and accustomize myself back to being blind, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of helps
So,
get me in the right headspace. Yeah.
so you don't wear contacts in the ring? Like you just go in there and can't see anything?
I do not wear contacts in the ring. I never have. I've worn glasses since I was 7. And I've had pretty bad vision my entire life. Yeah. I've never wrestled with contacts or yeah, I just kind of figured it out and I've been doing it. Yeah.
Like my mind is blown because I've had glasses since like the 2nd grade,
Yep.
and I can't see a damn thing without my glasses, but I have contacts that I wear quite regularly. If you ask me to do anything without my glasses, I'll be like, guess again, because I am not even going to be able to walk
I mean,
halfway across my
I wouldn't
room.
want to walk long distances or drive or I couldn't watch a movie or television or anything without glasses. No way. But fighting people for money, absolutely, I will do that blind, 100%.
that that honestly, like, your wrestling is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but now that I know that you do it without like being able to really see anything, like that's the most impressive thing about you to me now, because I can't do anything without my glasses.
That yeah, I was doing like a press kind of. I don't want to say a press conference, but like whenever you I've been over twice, lucky enough, for WXW in Germany. They do these kind of like press meetings like after the matches where like they have like media from various websites and local television and all sorts of stuff at the shows, and they'll like throw you in front of them with a microphone. And yeah, that question got asked because I think someone got tipped off to it. It was like, hey, we heard that you're actually blind. And in front of like all these people, I was like, yeah, that's true. I can't see anything. And like the room just went silent. Everyone was like, wait, what? Like, I've seen you do some like crazy thing. And I was like, yeah, I can't see where I have an idea of where I'm going. I can see, you know, shapes and colors and that sort of thing, right? But
Wow.
mhm.
Like like that, like my mind is completely blown. I, like I said, I know like without my glasses I cannot see a damn thing and or really do anything. Like I wouldn't even want to. And you're just like fighting people for money and bouncing off ropes and doing all kinds of stuff. And I'm just like, I can't even like fathom that. That's so out of the realm of
I
things
hope
that I can think of.
I hope that's the headline that gets taken from this is Daniel Makabe fights people for money whilst blind. Just because I think that's a funny recurring phrase. It's not a lot of money. Um, it'd be like Daniel Makabe fights people for fun whilst blind. That's maybe a little bit of a better headline. So
It's like one of those fill in the blank things, and it just all of a sudden just came together. It's
yes,
like
yeah,
Daniel Makabe
absolutely.
fights people for money while blind.
Yeah, I should put that on a t-shirt. So
You really should. I would absolutely
I was gonna
1,010%
say
buy
I'm
that
not
t-shirt.
opposed. I've had some very wordy shirt designs in the past. Anyone who's bought, I had, yeah, I've had some shirt designs that are just like full on text, no nothing else. So yeah, if it's
Appreciate
clever
that.
and I think it's good, I'll do it. So yeah,
I appreciate that. So my other question regarding your illustrious backyard career,
yes,
is there any footage of that that exists anywhere?
lots of it.
Is it like all on YouTube?
Some
If
of
I
it.
s- if I search like Daniel Makabe backyard,
You'll find
oh,
some stuff. Yeah, not a lot of the early stuff, but yeah, it's out there.
brilliant. I know what I'm doing after this.
I'll maybe curate some stuff that I'll send to you.
Send
That's
me. Yeah. I'll watch whatever.
yeah,
That
because
sounds
some of it
fantastic.
is better than others. Like that was the other thing is like I did use this name when I backyarded. And then when I came back to working more regularly in like 2014, 15, it was just on local shows in Seattle. And I was like, I don't need to change my name. Who gives a shit? And then like this happened, and it's like, oh, I'm getting like flown to Europe and all over the United States, and like I'm still using my dumb backyarding name that was 100% like an inside joke that I took years and years ago, and it is based on Togi Makabe, who's a New Japan pro wrestler. Um, that's who the name is taken from. But like, and he told me years ago, like, hey, all these cool things are going to happen to you. I would have been like, let me think of a better like name to go by for the next 18 years of my life. But here we are. So yeah, but yes, it's out there. I will personally find some above average stuff and send it to you.
No, send me all of it. Send me above average, send me like bottom of the barrel, like even like I'm sure that even like the stuff that you think is bad will probably be better than a lot of stuff. So
Fair, fair. There's a very good channel on YouTube of like our kind of community, like our backyard community. We had like a message board and a forum, like pre Facebook and pre social media, where a lot of people would share their media with one another. And someone who's actually a pretty prominent pro wrestler from Chicago, um, he put together a YouTube channel, and there's tons of it on there. So yeah, there's a lot of entertaining stuff, and I will send you some of the better stuff.
brilliant. So you were talking earlier about how you were doing the backyard stuff and then you were booking this local promotions ring and then that's when you decided to start training. Is that
Yeah.
so? Like what was training like compared to your backyarding? Was it, do you think it was easier or harder maybe? I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that, but
Training's harder. Training's harder. Backyarding, you just do what the hell, whatever you want to do, basically, right? You might have someone who's like a booker, for lack of a better word, who's like, hey, here's the matches I want to be done. But, you know, typically you just kind of go out and I think I know how to do this, right? But like, no one like takes backyarding serious to the point that they're like dieting or, you know, going to the gym or, you know, unless that's something that's part of their normal regimen, right? So I was lucky enough that when I started training, it was summer, and my two buddies I was training with weren't working jobs. I was working a part-time job, but we were able to train like 4 days a week, 3, 4 days a week, which is definitely above average. Um, and so, yeah, that was beneficial for sure. But like, yeah, you're doing way more cardiovascular stuff. You're doing calisthenics. You're doing all the unfun stuff that like comes with this, so that like the training's hard, so that the matches are easy in theory, right? So that you're not getting tired, and so you know you're not getting injured. That's the other thing. got to learn how to fall. You got to learn how to do all this stuff. One thing that people 100% will take for granted unless they've never had to do it is when you first learn how to run the ropes. Especially, there's typically only two kinds of ropes you're going to encounter in a pro wrestling ring. You're either going to have like actual rope, like the WWE uses rope, but it's still like a very hard kind of elastic kind of rope, or you're going to have like steel cable, like aircraft cable, that's then typically wrapped in like garden hose, like it's like wrapped in a tubing, and then it's wrapped in tape usually, right? So both have their pros and cons. Aircraft cable typically is you'll get a better bounce off of it. So anyone who's doing like springboards or jumping off the ropes, they typically will prefer aircraft cable versus rope. Not so much, although like you see lots of guys are able to pull things off in the WWE still. They've got like tippy top ropes, obviously. But one thing that people don't account for is when you're running into those ropes, be them cable or rope or whatever, your back is not used to that initially. And so myself included, and basically everyone I've ever encountered, when you first learn to run ropes and you're just getting the repetition in of doing it over and over again, because there is a proper way to doing it. You have to hit them in a certain manner. The amount of steps that you're taking when you're running between ropes is calculated. You end up with rope-shaped bruises on your back. Like you end up with like lines across your back where the ropes hit your back, because then you're just getting the repetition of hitting it on the same spot over and over and over again.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It can be, yeah. Like now, I mean, I barely run ropes. That's just more my style. But like now I can run ropes all day and it's just nature, right? But I'm not gonna end up bruised. It's not gonna hurt, whatever. But when you're first kind of building up an immunity to it, yeah, it sucks.
So what was your first bump like in like a real wrestling ring versus like compared to like your yard ring?
Backyard rings are typically they have a better spring to them, and they like, even though I said like, I know some people who have built backyard rings with mattresses or whatever. Obviously, a mattress is nicer than a pro ring, right? But even with the like wood and carpet underlay, you get so much more spring from tires than you do from most pro wrestling rings. And that's the other thing. The big thing is, oh, pro wrestling rings, they're spring loaded, right? I've been in maybe 2 spring loaded rings in my entire life. Like the majority of pro wrestling rings are not spring loaded. And so, yeah, depending on the ring you're in, some are a lot nicer than others. Some are a lot firmer than others. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of being mindful and just getting over it. You got to be careful to not back of your head, so you got to be tucking your chin. You got to be mindful of spreading yourself out as big as possible to increase your surface area, so that you're kind of taking the brunt of everything across your entire body. So it's just like a lot of little things that are being drilled into your head, and you're sort of, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this. Okay, now I just have to do it. And sometimes it's easier said than done. So I don't remember having like too much difficulty getting over it. I think just because I had watched a lot of wrestling, I had done a lot of backyarding at that point, it was just sort of, it kind of came to me like relatively easy. Which isn't to say like I haven't been sore and I haven't had back issues and I haven't, all that stuff. But just kind of, I think I had the nice kind of precursor that made a natural progression. So
Yeah, most of the rings that I've seen have been like boards on metal with like maybe like you were talking about, like a little bit of carpet padding, and then like the canvas.
this is typically all they are. Yeah.
And anybody that ever is like, oh, they're padded, they have I'm like, you're out of your mind. Not any ring that I have ever seen.
No.
So, what would you say has been your greatest achievement in wrestling? And that can be like a title or a specific match or opponent, or just something that you've done that you would consider like your greatest achievement thus far.
Never actually thought about that. Um, hmm. Hmm. I don't know. There's obviously been big matches. There's been big accomplishments. Huh. Yeah, I want to write like an essay about that. I should actually sit down and think about that. I'm someone, admittedly, who struggles with setting goals, and I always have from a young age. Like it was something I struggled with in school. I just kind of rested on my laurels, and that's something that I was able to do to a certain extent in independent wrestling until once you kind of try to break out of your local area, then you kind of have to go above and beyond and try to get better, right? Um, so I think getting out of the Northwest has been huge. I love it here, and I love the wrestling community here. We have an amazing amount of talent here in the Pacific Northwest that a lot of people overlook because we're so far removed from the rest of North America. Um, but it was huge for me to not only just get out, but kind of become, I, I guess I will say, one of my goals that I did set when I kind of decided, there's bigger and better things out there for me was to like become the person that people think of when they think of the Pacific Northwest, and to be like the go-to, like, we want to get someone from the Northwest for our show, he's the guy. And I think to a certain extent, that has been accomplished, and obviously the pandemic has screwed everything up. Um, but prior to that, I had a crazy 2019 and the beginning of 2020 where I was getting, flown all over the United States and getting flown to Europe multiple times. Um, and yeah, I think that's a broad answer that I'll give. Um, Europe is huge, and I've been lucky to get booked in and booked very favorably in some really amazing independent wrestling tournaments. Most notably, the Scenic City Invitational in Chattanooga in 2019. I'm sure there are people who are listening to this who like me saying that. Um, and multiple other tournaments all over North America. But getting to be a part of WXW 16 Carat in 2020 was huge. That's like one of the tippy top tournaments in independent wrestling. It was the largest shows I've ever been a part of. So that was huge. And then I think just getting to wrestle people that I look up to as being some of the best in the world, and being able to hold my own against them, and not only hold my own, but do well and have matches that people look at as being very good. And so the two that kind of stand out to me, and part of it is because of the building that happened in, um, I was lucky enough to wrestle 3 times in a building called the Showbox at the Market, which is a very famous concert venue in Seattle, Washington, right across from the Pike Place Market, which is probably the most famous tourist destination in that city. It's where they throw the fish. And yeah, I was lucky to be on 3 shows in that building. And 2 of those matches were against Jonathan Gresham and Timothy Thatcher, both of which in front of, big houses, some of the biggest houses I've ever worked in front of, and getting to do the kind of matches that I love and have always dreamt of doing against people that I consider to be the best in the world, and have them be kind of looked upon as some of the best matches of the style the last few years or ever, or whatever people want to say. So yeah. Anyways, that was a bunch of answers I gave you for one answer. I can't really narrow it down to one. Get back to me at some point, and I'll come up with a more definitive answer.
You're fine. That was open to interpretation. And
Yes.
achievements are different for different people depending on, what you're looking to accomplish or whatever.
Yes.
So that worked for me.
Good. Good.
So
What if it didn't, and you were like, not a good enough answer? I'm gonna
try
hijack
again.
this interview until you give me a better one.
Try again.
That'd be
No.
quite the tactic that I would not see coming from you whatsoever. So thank you for not going down that route.
Man, I love doing these interviews, but it's all about who I'm interviewing. In this case, it's all about you. Like, whatever you feel and what you want to say. Like, I'm not important. Like, who cares about me? Like, you're like the guy. So whatever you want to say, I'm not gonna.
Fair enough.
I'm not gonna react negatively to your thoughts and feelings. Like, that's what I'm looking for. So what has been like the greatest obstacle that you've overcome in wrestling?
Yeah, again, a couple different answers I'm thinking of. One I kind of already went over, which is geography.
Yeah.
Geography is huge. And like I said, there's a ton of talent up here in the Northwest. The reason why a lot of people don't find out about them is because no one gets out of here. And you got to get out of here to make it, honestly. Like the two biggest names to come from Vancouver are Kyle O'Reilly and El Phantasmo, and both of them are kind of on top of their respective worlds, and both of them moved away from Vancouver in order to do so. I'm not moving anywhere. That's not something that is really in the cards for me. But I was able to get some chances, take some chances on myself. You kind of have to bet on yourself, and so I was able to kind of put myself out there and put myself in front of new audiences, like at WrestleMania weekend in New Jersey 2 years ago. I worked for, some more high profile independents outside of the area. I worked for Freelance, I worked for Black Label Pro, I worked for Southern Underground Pro. Those places were willing to take a chance on me. And so I was lucky in that, but I had to kind of take a chance on myself as well. Right. So that's a big one for sure. I also broke my foot once. That was awful. Don't do that. I broke my foot in a match in 2016 in Seattle, and it was very painful and a real struggle dealing with insurance because I'm not an American. And yeah, so that was easily the biggest hassle I've ever dealt with in wrestling, for sure.
Fair enough. I kind of understand the geography thing. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and once you get like west past Chicago, it's like a black hole.
Yeah.
Like it really is. And until you hit the West Coast. So I see like the guys here struggle with that a little bit to like get out and go places.
I would think that would be maybe even more of a struggle than it is here. So like you don't hear about anyone in kind of that Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, Utah, the Dakotas, that kind of middle part of the country, right? Whereas, I'm very lucky that we have a really healthy scene here in the Northwest between Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland. Those are three major metropolitan areas that I can work regularly. Between those three cities, like Vancouver to Portland's about a 5 to 6 hour drive. It's not too bad. But if you were to keep going south from there, the next major kind of area is like San Francisco, Oakland, Bay Area. And that's like an additional like 10, 12 hours from Portland down to there. Likewise, if I want to go east, the states, has some big spread out areas. Canada is way worse because the next major city east of Vancouver is Calgary, which doesn't have as big of a wrestling community as you would think, considering the history in that city with wrestling. But there's still a scene, but it's also an 11 to 12 hour drive from Vancouver, and so it's not easy.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to drive 11 or 12 hours. The best I can do is about 6 to 8. So,
Yeah, which is why I've never really done too much pushing trying to get booked in Alberta, in Calgary or Edmonton. It's something I'd like to do eventually, just because I love this country and I want to wrestle in more parts of this country. And outside of Vancouver, I wrestled in Toronto once, and that's it. I've never wrestled in Alberta. I've never wrestled in Quebec. Both of those provinces have pretty decent scenes. There is wrestling in other parts of the country. It's definitely not as big. But yeah, I would love to wrestle in more parts of my own country because that seems logical. I don't know.
fair enough.
Yeah.
So, what what are your future plans and dreams, and what keeps you motivated either in wrestling or outside of wrestling or both?
Oh, yeah. The future is a funny one. The current climate has definitely put things on hold or pushed things back. Um, Being on the other side of the border has really negatively affected whatever future plans I had, for sure. Funny enough, I had like a huge weekend booked for Tampa last year for WrestleMania, like some huge, huge matches. And then I had a handful of local stuff still on the docket for like springtime, like April until the first weekend of May. And then I was actually going to take 3 months off because I had some nagging injuries. I had a back issue. I always have knee issues. My knee has been bothering me since I was 18 years old. And so I was going to take basically the entirety of the spring off and come back for SCI last year, which like a natural kind of jumping back on point. And then COVID happened, and I figured, well, this is actually good because I was going to take all this time off. Now everyone has to take all this time off. I'm not losing any ground, because that's kind of the unfair reality of independent wrestling is it's what have you done for me lately, right? It's who's the shiny new toy, who has a couple good matches, and then it's all of a sudden, oh, everyone wants to book this guy, right? Which is fair. I kind of fell into the same situation in 2019, but I figured, okay, well, we're all kind of remaining on an even playing ground while I take this time off to heal. But obviously, this is stretched on longer than I would have liked. And the fact of the matter is the Canadian-U.S. border is closed to regular traffic. I can't drive across it. It's a major hassle for me to wrestle in the United States, which is why I've only done it twice in the last year. And so that's definitely put everything on hold for sure. What keeps me motivated? I'm not someone who's particularly motivated by money. I don't have aspirations of ever going and signing a contract to a major company. I don't think either of the major companies in North America really suit me or my style or my personal values, really. not that I fault anyone who wants to wrestle for those companies, and obviously everyone else's dreams aren't going to be the same as mine. I am someone who is motivated first and foremost artistically, and by the fact of the matter is that there's so many talented independent wrestlers, people that I consider my peers, people that I look up to in some instances, who I still haven't wrestled yet. And in markets or in cities or buildings or wherever that I still haven't wrestled. And I feel like I still have enough in me to leave my mark on the wrestling community and to be seen as someone who was different and had interesting and good matches and in a style that's maybe antiquated, but honestly, I don't think it is. I think it's honestly, my style has become unique because no one else does it anymore. And so that just motivates me even more to be the best me that I can be and have a bunch of awesome matches along the way and have something that I can look back on when I finally am done, which I don't know when that's going to be, hopefully not soon. I can be really proud and happy with what I accomplished, and something that I can show, other people in my life. Uh, this was something that was important to me. I did it well.
Well, I mean, I think that to me, like, I love your matches. I love the style that you have. So I think it's really cool that it is something a little bit different.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Uh, so what have been like, I first, so we were kind of talking about the WrestleMania weekend. I know that you're a big music guy.
Yes.
I appreciate your regular Twitter recommendations. And if you could sum up your Mania weekend in one song, what would it be and why?
We're talking the Mania weekend that just passed a
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
weeks ago.
yeah. The most recent Mania weekend.
Hmm. That's a very clever question that I don't have a clever answer for. Uh, um, hmm. I can't think of a specific answer. I will say that it would be something that has I think of something that's balanced. Like full admission, I'm relatively happy with how Mania weekend. I'm not I'm not over the moon. Um, there's definitely some like an element of bittersweet um, tone to it. Um, I don't think that I did my best. I don't think that circumstances were particularly how I would have loved them to be, obviously. Um, it was something that I just felt the need to do. I haven't stepped foot in a wrestling ring since October. I had the match with Lee Moriarty in Indiana. I came back. I had one match on a secret show here in Vancouver on Halloween. And then literally on November 2nd, all contact sports were canceled in the province, and they have been ever since. So um, it was just something that I needed to do for my own mental health. And I just kind of had to just force it. It wasn't an ideal situation. I didn't really want to travel to Florida, if I'm being honest. But I just felt like it's something that I needed to do for myself. And it was either gonna, be a home run smash success, or be, I was gonna end up sick and dead in Florida, or it was gonna end up somewhere in the middle. And uh, it kind of ended up somewhere in the middle. So the first kind of answer that came to me was the song, which I don't even really like this song that much, but is "Bittersweet Symphony" by the Verve, which was like a huge friggin' hit in like the late '90s that you could not escape, even here. I mean, they were a Britpop band, but so that is kind of first initial thought that came to my mind, and that's kind of the logic behind it. So
Huh. That that is like one of my favorite, like if I'm in a bar and I want to hijack like their touch tunes, that is usually my first go-to
that's
because it's kind of palatable for everyone.
that's
Allows me
not
to feel
bad.
out the room.
I mean, there was a period of time. There's a really funny John Mulaney bit about hijacking a jukebox and playing "What's New, Pussycat" by Tom Jones over and over again. So if you haven't heard that bit, I do suggest looking it up. It's very funny. And I've definitely, when I first heard that bit with my friends, tried to reenact it. But most modern jukeboxes won't let you repeat the same song over and over and over again. Like they'll cancel all the this everything after the first one. I've been in situations where I've gone to play that song, and like it's gotten like a minute in, and like the bartender or like a line cook or someone's been like, nope, this is not happening. Like I know what this person's trying to do. So but the other song that I try to play when I'm in those kind of situations is "I Am the Resurrection" by the Stone Roses. And that's just because it's a really good song and it's 9 minutes long. And so I like to get my money's worth. So.
See, if I'm trying to mess with people, usually my go-tos are "Under the Sea" from The Little Mermaid, or John Cena's entrance theme, or the Hokey Pokey.
Yeah, yeah, that all sounds awful. So so you win. You win this round.
It's just because I'm weird. But speaking of music and favorites, what is your favorite like road music when you're traveling? Like, what is your like go-to? This is what I'm gonna listen to.
Hmm. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm driving, typically. Um, but that can only do you so far, right? What is my favorite? It's really a situation by situation kind of thing. If I'm with other people in the car, I typically try to not annoy them with weird stuff or like stuff that's too heavy. Um, I definitely, um, hmm, nothing's jumping out at me. Oh, that's annoying. Music guy is supposed to have all these music answers on the top of my head. I'm failing. Yeah. A lot of the times, honestly, like, and this is like as corny gets, but this is something that I do typically when I'm traveling somewhere. Um, and it quite often colors, I don't know if people pick up on it, but when I'm doing my um, like daily recommendations on Twitter as far as songs go, if I'm going to be somewhere for wrestling or otherwise, typically the recommendations are based on bands from that city or state or country or whatever. Or if I'm wrestling someone from a particular area and they're from out of town, it'll be a band, you know, from where they're from. So I did nothing but Florida stuff for 2 weeks ago or whatever. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Like I run out of German bands from Germany pretty easily. It's a lot of like power metal when I go to Germany because that's all the stuff that I know from there, or a lot of like 70s krautrock I know. Um, sometimes, if I'm driving to Portland, I just feel like listening to like some bands from the Northwest, bands from Portland, like the Decemberists or Modest Mouse aren't originally from Portland, but that's where they're based out of now. So stuff like that, or yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of a situation by situation. Sorry.
You're what podcast do you usually listen to?
Oh, too many. Let me see. What do I listen to? I mean, there's some wrestling ones that I listen to. What do I listen to wrestling wise? I've been on the show multiple times, but Between the Sheets is probably my favorite wrestling podcast. That's every Monday, and it's like 5 hours every Monday. So when I'm, under normal circumstances and I have a normal work week, it gets stretched out over a couple days because I can't listen to music at my desk, unfortunately. I do have a boring desk job. What else do I listen to? Tuesday, I listen to a podcast called Axe to Grind, which is all about like hardcore and like punk rock music. Wednesdays, there is a movie podcast that I listen to that I was actually about halfway through listening to today's episode. That's called So It's Come to This, a movie podcast. My friend Eric runs that. He also writes for an amazing wrestling blog called Segunda Caída. Thursdays, I regularly listen to a podcast called Doughboys, which is two comedians who reviewed chain restaurants, and it's very funny. And I subscribe to their Patreon as well, so I get like bonus episodes for that. And then I'm sure there's something I'm missing. I've been on a couple podcasts this week, and they're ones that I listen to semi-regularly. Friends of mine called Quentin and Timothy, they've got a show called QNTR. I was on their show this past week talking about WrestleMania weekend stuff. And then Struggles, who is the play-by-play announcer for ICW No Holds Barred. He's got a really good interview podcast called Spotlight Series that I was on the other day. And there's probably other stuff that I'm forgetting about. Oh, Song Exploder is an amazing music podcast that is now a Netflix series as well. But it's like every other week, and it's like 20 minutes. It's like an easy listen, and it's someone explaining like how a song is made. And it's interesting for me as someone who plays music and is a musician, also because of how foreign certain people's songwriting processes, like how pop music is written, is so foreign to me. It's like bizarre. Like they're going over like, oh, I met with my 6 producers, and it's like, okay, like that seems excessive, but cool. You're worth a lot of money and I'm not. So, but I think that's just a really interesting, and it's a super easy lesson. So there's probably others that I forgot, but that's the majority of them.
I think I've listened to different episodes of the Song Exploder before. But I've only recently been getting into podcasts because my work is boring.
Yes. I don't have a long commute, and I'm not able to listen to them at work. So sometimes, like there was a period of time where I was working as a courier, and I was literally just like on foot walking around downtown Vancouver delivering packages all day. And so I was just like trying to find new things to listen to because I just had headphones in 8 hours a day as I was walking around the city delivering packages. But now, unfortunately, I have to be a little more attentive to computers and phones and stuff. So
Yeah, I'm lucky at my job. I can mostly just zone out with some whatever I want to listen to, which is great because then people don't talk to me, which is fine.
that sounds ideal, but yeah, not always the case for me, unfortunately.
Usually people interrupt me and I was like, like scared and confused. Uh, so, um, traveling, like, what are your like go-to like road snacks?
Oh, depends if I'm trying to be good or not. Um, yeah, there's like before a match or like after a wrestling weekend for sure. Um,
I
like
want to
if
hear
I
it all. I'm a snack girl, so
yeah, and so if I'm trying to be good, or if it's like it's Friday and I'm driving and I still got shots like the rest of the weekend, like trying to not drink calories. I'm trying to not have anything that's too fatty. Um, but if it's, I mean, full admission, like my go-to, and not so much now, um, but like after a wrestling meal is Taco Bell for sure, because they've got a ton of options for vegans and vegetarians, which I'm a vegetarian. They're open late and it's pretty cost effective as well, which is nice. Um, but Taco Bell in this country sucks. It is not the same, and it's not nearly as good. So I refuse to eat it here. Um, but whenever I'm in the States, I typically will have it. Like most wrestling weekends, I'm probably having Taco Bell at least once. Um, and then if like a wrestling weekend's over and it's like the ride back from like a shot and it's like, hey, you did well, you deserve a treat. It's probably gonna be something like Reese's specific. Like I'm a peanut butter nut for sure. So like I really like the big Reese's cups that have like the little mini Reese's pieces inside of them, which seems like what's the point? It's just excessive. It's peanut butter inside of peanut butter, but like it's added texture and yeah, those are really tasty. Um, I drink I'm a bit of a coffee snob. So that's something that I like if I'm going to be in a new city, I'm trying to find like where's the best coffee. And like luckily, like this past time in Tampa, I was staying with Violence is Forever and Kevin Koo, one of my good personal friends, is also a coffee snob. So we did the research and found like the best coffee places in Tampa and dragged the rest of our Airbnb mates with us, like, hey, this is where we're going. Do you want something from there? Like, if not, too bad. This is where we're going. So yeah, always some kind of coffee. Um, I like I'll drink yerba mate or kombucha occasionally, but I don't drink a ton of soda. Occasionally, like again, if it's like, okay, you did well, like you get to have like a Baja Blast at Taco Bell or something. But
fair. I like that you're just like, no, we're going to this specific coffee place.
100%.
And
And
I like,
I've been in cities where I've been staying with people and be like, hey, can you bring me to get like coffee? Like where are your local places? And they're like, we can go to Starbucks. And I was like, no, that is not an acceptable answer. Like in a pinch, sure, but in an airport, okay. But yeah, no. If it's by choice, we're going like somewhere local and somewhere good. So
fair enough. What is your favorite city to wrestle in?
um yeah, this isn't fair. It's Seattle, like hands down, slam dunk. Like Nashville is probably runner up, number two. Um, but yeah, it's Seattle. Like without, yeah, it's not even fair. I mean, I owe everything to that city. And getting to regularly work in front of amazing fans and for multiple companies. But yeah, it's a home away from home. Honestly, I've wrestled more in Seattle than I have in Vancouver, like way more in Seattle than I have in Vancouver. Um, I think the fans are better there, being honest. Like, there are some great fans in Vancouver, don't get me wrong, but I just, yeah, it's my home and the people have really accepted me and my style there, more than almost anywhere. So Seattle in a landslide. Nashville, I also love. And admittedly, it's working in the basement east for SUP in East Nashville. For those fans, like that's an amazing crowd as well. And then I will say, this isn't a city; it's a country. But England has really kind of taken to me as well. And I think it's just because the style that I work is a little bit more in line with what they're used to, and so I don't have to convince them that what I'm doing is interesting or cool or good because they already are on board. So.
So, what has been some of your favorite opponents or matches over the many
Oh,
years?
so many. I feel like I give this answer in like every interview I do, so I'm just gonna like say it and then we're gonna move on. But like
Okay.
I owe everything to Tim Thatcher and getting to wrestle him so many times. It's really how I learned so much and really kind of figured out what I was doing and got so much better getting to wrestle him. I had 4 singles matches with him over the course of like 2.5 years. Um, I learned a ton getting to wrestle Jonathan Gresham in Seattle. That was amazing. We were supposed to wrestle each other in Tampa last year, and that would have been awesome as well, but it didn't happen for obvious reasons. Um, Getting to wrestle Fred Yehi, someone who I consider like amazing and super underrated, and getting to do so in New Jersey as a part of my first WrestleMania weekend, it was like the icing on the cake for that whole weekend and kind of made everything worthwhile. Like, yes, I can compete at this level and like put on top notch matches in a weekend where there's going to be a ton of top notch matches. Um, Speaking of Nashville, wrestling Kevin Koo in Nashville. He's one of my best friends, but I love getting to wrestle him. Um, Kind of an underrated match. A couple matches I had in England that were really good. All of these are available online on YouTube or on IWTV, by the way. A couple matches I had in England that were really good. One was against someone named Carlos Romo, who is from Spain. We wrestled each other in Sheffield, England. That was my first match ever in England and was really, really well received. And then also I wrestled a British gentleman named Jordan Breaks, and we wrestled at Riptide Wrestling, and that was one of my favorite matches that I've ever had for like a company that was amazing. And then I guess just I know you said favorite opponent. I'm just keep on rattling them off.
I
Two that
said
I would
4
be
opponents. You're
two
fine.
I would be remiss if I did not mention, and we can end on this, the 2 absolute legends of wrestling who if you had told like 20-year-old me that I would get to wrestle these gentlemen, I would call you a liar. Um, One is Negro Navarro, who is an amazing luchador, maestro, mat worker from Mexico, who's in his 60s, has been wrestling since the 70s. I got to wrestle him in Seattle in the summer of 2018, and that was an amazing match. And I'm currently in the process of politicking to get a rematch with him in Mexico. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw me doing that this morning. The other match was getting to wrestle Yuki Ichikawa and Daisuke Ikeda, both of the Battle Arts promotion, legendary Japanese shoot style wrestlers who I've looked up to since I was literally a teenager. I got to wrestle them in a tag match in Germany last year, and that was like truly like mind blowing. Being told like, hey, this is a thing that's going to happen, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's no big deal at all. I'm going to be able to keep my cool for the next week before this happens. So yeah, huge, 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 huge. So, but there's lots of people I forgot, and other people. I've been really lucky, especially over the course of the last like 3-4 years, to get to wrestle some like truly amazing wrestlers in independent wrestling. Some of whom have gone on to bigger and better things in major national promotions, and some of whom I would love to get to wrestle again if I get the opportunity. So.
I'm just going to assume that anyone you left out, you did intentionally because you hate them.
Honestly, I don't really hate anyone. I'm pretty affable. So yeah, if I hate you, you like did something really bad. So not my style.
Fair enough. I'm just messing with you a
I
little.
know you're joking.
I was like, please don't ever take anything I say that seriously. I worry all the time about people hating me. So, um, so what's your favorite move to take, and what's your favorite move to give?
Oh boy. Favorite move to take. Ooh. I know my least favorite move to take. Favorite move to take.
We can
Huh.
start there. That's fine.
Least favorite move is body slam. Just basic, boring old body slam. Hate it. Don't do them to me. If you're in a match with me and you call it, I'm not gonna be stoked. Um, favorite. I used to love taking like a big Ric Flair back body drop. Um, but much like Ric Flair, my back has decided that I don't want to take those properly anymore, and I land on my side like he does. And so that's probably not my favorite anymore. But not a lot of people do them, and I know my friend Dylan Hales loves back body drops. So any chance I can, I try to throw them in, but my back honestly doesn't really like them. Favorite move to give. You know what? I if I can like land just like a perfectly executed and timed German suplex where my opponent's like shoulders land perfectly on the mat as I'm falling into my bridge and there's no like awkwardness or like having to adjust on the landing, that's like that's perfect. That's like my absolute favorite. If I can like nail a nice German suplex all day, that's my favorite thing to do.
And then do you have any like dream matches that you are like waiting for?
Let's get the list out.
Yeah. So you're one of the guys at the list.
I have yes,
Or you
yes.
you're maybe you're just a list guy.
I kind of am a list guy. Yeah, like um, I when it seemed feasible to have goals for for the year, when the year wasn't in so much disarray, I was starting to make like here are 10 things I want to accomplish this year kind of lists, and some of them were specific opponents or specific companies that I wanted to work for, countries that I wanted to go to, etc. Like my favorite goal for 2020, which didn't happen. Literally only one and a half of my goals happened for 2020, and then 2020 kind of just fell off the earth.
2020
Um,
doesn't count.
no, I guess not. I got to wrestle Yuki Ishikawa. That was one of my goals for 2020. One of them was wrestle in Mexico, but not against anyone under the age of 45. I specifically just wanted to wrestle like old luchadors who work like that old it's called Yave or called Maestro style wrestling. So yeah, that's one that I really wanted, but did not happen. But recently, I did make a list that is people I still want to wrestle within parentheses again for anyone that I may have already wrestled, and I don't know, but like it goes on for a while.
That's a
So and
lengthy
it's broken
list.
down by region. People in Canada, specifically the Pacific Northwest, people in North America, people the world and abroad. So there's a few. There's a few. I won't name them. There's like 50 people here. I'm not going to name all 50
I was
of
gonna
them.
say it looks like there's a couple.
No, a couple big ones that have been teased online. I mean, Alex Shelley is a big one. We've had some interactions going back and forth, playing songs for one another in the weirdest series of "Is This Life" moments for me. So that's a big one. I was supposed to wrestle Nick Gage last year in Tampa, and that didn't happen. And that's one that I think is just so off the beaten path that like no one would expect. But I just think we would have a really interesting match together. Um, Chris Hero is a huge one, a big influence, obviously. He also goes by the moniker Wrestling Genius. I did not steal it from him if you think that I did. It was two ships passing in the night, I assure you. But he's someone that I think I could learn a lot from and have a really interesting and good match with. And then, yeah, there's still a ton. If I do get to go to Mexico, besides getting to wrestle Negro Navarro again, which I'd love, luchador that I'd love to work down there is named Beerus, who is an amazing mat wrestler. And that's something that I would love to be able to do. But there's like 50 other people on there that I still have to wrestle, so I'm not quitting anytime soon.
Well, yeah, you and Nick Gage would be interesting, is a real good word for that. I would be terrified, but
I mean, when it
that's
initially
why I'm not a wrestler. So
it got announced for Tampa last year, and I got so many messages of like, "Well, it's been nice knowing you," and I mean, full admission, I was the one who reached out to the promoter and said, "I think this would be an interesting match. I think this would sell tickets. I think it would be different from anything else on the whole spectrum of Mania weekend cards when there's a lot of repetition and a lot of samey, you see the same people wrestling on shows 5 or 6 times. This is a match that people would be like, what? Did I read that correctly? Like I need to see this. And I think we just have an interesting match. So.
I really hope that manifests at some point. And I hope that you survive.
I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
So, independent wrestler, travel a lot. You have to have like at least one like really good road story. Either something like absolutely insane that happened or something really funny. Like everyone has like at least one really good road story. So you can like, if you need to protect people's names by calling them whatever you want to, by all means. I'm not going to have you out anybody, but I know that you have to have at least one good road story.
Yeah, I'm sure I do, but I'm trying to think. Oh God. Trying to think. Huh. What is a good road story? Uh, hmm. Sorry.
You're fine.
Full admission, I don't know. I'm trying to
Or
look.
even any good like travel stories. You said you were overseas, like anything
Oh, I mean,
wacky about like
well,
about going
this
from
isn't
the
a nice
States
story,
and
but
North
it might
America to
be.
overseas.
Yeah, this is like the like definition. Hold on, it's dark in here. Um, yeah, this is the definition of like North American who does not speak the language, ending up in over his head. So the first time that I went to Germany was for WXW. They were having like a big tag team weekend, but I was booked for some like smaller shows to go with it. So they had a show called Inner Circle that I was on, and then they had a show that was like an ambition shoot style tournament, which I've done multiple for them at this point. And so that was Thursday night and Sunday afternoon. In the meantime, I got booked for Riptide in Brighton in England. So I left Vancouver Wednesday afternoon. I landed in I landed in Germany Thursday morning. I had to do an interview for them for their website Thursday afternoon. Wrestled Thursday night. Friday morning, I flew to England, then had to take a train down to where I was wrestling. Wrestled in England Friday night, and then Saturday afternoon. Saturday night, I had to fly back to Germany because I had the show Sunday afternoon for them. So I land in, WXW's main shows are run in a city called Oberhausen, and it's about a 20-minute drive or train ride from Dusseldorf, which is the main city. It's where the airport is. And so I was flying into Dusseldorf, and previously I had been picked up by WXW. However, they informed me that the person who was picking me up was needed at the show. He was actually booked on the show. And so they're like, hey, can you figure out the train and take the train to Oberhausen from Dusseldorf? Sure, no problem. They sent me like a list of directions on these are the trains to take, and here's how to do this and that, and whatever. And so I booked my ticket, and I got on the train, and it was like maybe 10:30 at night when I got on the train. And, I was told, oh, it's only like a 20-minute train ride. And I kept waiting for the stop to come up. I kept waiting for the stop to come up. I'm looking at maps, and the maps don't make any sense to me. Which train am I on? And no one speaks English. And it wasn't until I'd been on the train for like an hour and was approaching the final stop that I realized that I'd gotten on the right train going in the wrong direction. And then I was at like the end of the line, and it was like 11:30 at night, and there was no one there, and no one spoke English, and like nothing was open, like no McDonald's or anything. So I couldn't even like the Wi-Fi uh, where I was. And luckily for me, there was another train going back the direction that I needed it to go, but I didn't end up getting to Oberhausen until like 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And then I had to wake up for like 10 a.m. the next day, and I had 3 matches the next day.
Oh,
So
I that
yeah,
sounds
that was brutal. That was brutal.
that sounds terrifying. I like I'm from a really small town in a really small place, and public transportation is like a mystery to me.
Yeah,
Trying to figure it out is just like scary.
I
Which is such a
lucky.
stupid thing to say, but
No, that's fair. Like, admittedly, like Vancouver has a really amazing public transportation system, and so I didn't have a driver's license until I was 23 because I was taking the train and the bus everywhere because it's so readily available. Like, I'm an 8-minute walk from a train station. I can be in downtown Vancouver in like 20 minutes on the train. So, um, but yeah, so part of me was maybe being a little cocky and also being a little cheapish about asking people if they spoke English, but it didn't seem like anyone spoke English. And yeah, so I screwed up. The longer the short of it is, I screwed up. So, but thankfully I wasn't stranded, and thankfully I was able to get to my destination, and that was that. So yeah.
so I know with um things the way that they are at present. Do you have any like upcoming shows at this point or not really?
No, nothing. There are things that are on the table that will fingers crossed happen, but nothing that's booked, nothing that I can advertise, nothing that I'm confident will actually happen. Yeah, it all depends on the border opening again, and traveling between countries being um, more feasible, because right now it's not. So yeah, unfortunately, when that happens, I will be taking full advantage of it, I assure you. But yeah, for the time being, nothing, unfortunately.
So outside of wrestling, what are some of your other hobbies? I know that, like I said, I know you're a big music guy and that you are in like you're a musician, but other than that, and if you want to extrapolate, that would be great.
That's a big one, is playing music. Yeah, I play in a couple bands. We haven't been able to practice regularly because of all of this. But I still play quite a bit at home. And then What else? I'm kind of outdoorsy. I didn't become outdoorsy till I was like in my late 20s, early 30s, and then it was like, oh, I live in the most beautiful place on earth. I should probably start hiking more. So I do love to hike in the summer. I like to go swimming in the summer. I don't really play a ton of sports otherwise. I used to play baseball for like 9 or 10 years. And honestly, what kind of killed that was me getting busy with pro wrestling because my baseball games were on the weekend and my bookings just kept getting more and more and more that I was missing so many games. Um, so I had to put an end to that, unfortunately. What else? Um, I love going to the movies. Like I'm a bit of a I used to be more of a movie buff than I am now, but like there's like a local independent one screen theater here in Vancouver called the Rio, which was open for a period of time last summer, but has subsequently been closed down again because of regulations here in British Columbia. But I just like to go see old movies, classic movies, cult movies. That's a big one for me too. So yeah. Otherwise, I don't know. I work. I go to the gym. I listen to music and podcasts, and yeah, that's about it. I drink. My weekends are usually drinking fancy coffee and going record shopping. Yeah, I'm a record collector too. So
What are some of your favorite records that you have?
oh god. Um, I will say I'll make this easy on myself. Like I don't know, like I've got some stuff that's worth some money, but nothing that's like hugely valuable. But my three favorite albums of all time that I will say that I own all three on vinyl, actually, and I think I own all three on CD as well, um, are Neutral Milk Hotel's "In the Aeroplane Over the Sea," which is one of my favorite records to play along with too. There was a period of time where I could play most of the songs on that record, and I actually played in a Neutral Milk Hotel cover band for a period of time. Um, a band called Slint, who released a record called Spiderland, um, that actually just had its 30th anniversary. Um, Hugely influential record on me, both as a fan of independent music and also as a musician myself. And anyone who saw my most recent promo building up the match versus Eric Royal, I was playing a Slint song off that record. Um, and then like I guess it's kind of a cliche answer, but the first Weezer record, self-titled Weezer record, the Blue Album, um, for me, my money is still like the most amazing, just like rock power pop songs ever written. So catchy, hooky riffs. The guitar tone's amazing. You know, relatable lyrics. I don't know. That's a band that I've loved. I mean, they've got such a huge catalog nowadays that like most of it's not good, but they still have some of my favorite records of all time. And yeah, so that's one that I go to all the time for sure.
So, what are you said that you're a big movie guy? Like, what are some of your favorite movies?
Oh, geez. Favorite movies. I used to always say that my favorite movie was Rushmore, which is a Wes Anderson movie starring Jason Schwartzman and Bill Murray. I still love that movie, but upon re-watching it recently, like I don't know. I mean, I guess like the point of the movie is that everyone's a horrible person, and so you're supposed to feel a certain way about them. But I was really feeling a certain way about them at one point. Um, there's a movie called The Decline of Western Civilization Part Two, which is a documentary about the '80s hair metal scene in on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. That is the most unintentional, hilarious comedy ever made. It's directed by a woman named Penelope Spheris, who made the whole trilogy of Decline of Western Civilization films she made are very good. It stands out upon from the other two as being completely different and very ridiculous. She also made Wayne's World and a bunch of other movies. So yeah, I love The Decline. What else? I definitely went through like an artsy fartsy period in my like late teens, early 20s. I was a huge Akira Kurosawa fan, who's a Japanese director, who's made some amazing movies. I guess most notably is Seven Samurai, which is like this epic, it's like 3.5 hours. And yeah, I love his movies. I'm a big documentary guy. Um, what else? Foreign films, Stanley Kubrick. I don't know, a bunch of cliche things, I guess.
Well, I have seen all of the Decline films. Decline 2 is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like what sticks in my mind always is like Paul Stanley just laying on the bed, like talking,
The
like it's normal.
the funniest part about that, which is like it's really sad and it's kind of mean spirited, but so like a lot of the set pieces in that film were like set up, as most documentaries are. Like documentarians kind of want to like skew things to like fit a narrative, right? And so Penelope Spheris, I guess, showed up for that shoot with Paul Stanley with some models like in tow to be a part of the shoot with him, right? Because it's if anyone hasn't seen it, it's Paul Stanley filmed from overhead on this giant bed with like satin sheets and these like 3 or 4 like lingerie models like adorning him, right? Penelope Spheris apparently showed up for the shoot with the models, and Paul Stanley said, I can get better looking girls. And so like he like called up like Playboy models that he knew that he thought were more fitting of the scene because it was going to be put to film for the rest of our lives. And so those are the girls that are actually in the movie there with him. But yes, that scene's ridiculous. Obviously, Ozzy making breakfast is ridiculous. Some of the bands, like I can't get. There's a band that some of the bands who were in that movie went on to be like pretty big. Like Megadeth is in that band in that movie. Who else had like Faster Pussycat, Cinderella, like all hair bands that were had their day in the sun. But there's a band in that movie called Odin who never became anything really at all. And there's two moments with them. There's one where like they're getting called on stage by like the promoter and like again like a model, and they start chanting Odin to like bring them on stage, but it's only like 2 people chanting Odin, and so it's like the saddest chant you've ever heard at an independent wrestling show, and like 2 people don't want to give up on a chant, and everyone's looking at them like this isn't working. This person is not over to the level that you want them to be. And that was poor Odin in that case. And then there's also a scene where they're in a hot tub with, which is actually kind of a really sad scene because they talk about how like they don't make it, like they don't know what they're gonna do. They might like consider killing themselves, and like they're all alive still, so it's fine. But like they also didn't make it. So, but yeah, no. If you haven't seen The Decline 2, if you take anything away from this interview, this last hour and a half of you watching or talking to me, yeah, watch The Decline of Western Civilization 2 for sure. I think they're all on Amazon. They're all on Amazon Prime now. So
after this, go check that out.
Yeah,
you won't be disappointed, even if you don't really like music or bands. There's just, even at face value, they are just kind of hilarious and also a little bit sad.
yes.
The guy from, I think it was Wasp, that was in the pool.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh.
With his mom. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So just kind of gonna start wrapping up here because it's been almost 2 hours. So I apologize for taking so much of your time.
No, you're good. I'm on the West Coast, so it's not that late here. I feel bad for anyone watching on the East Coast still. It's well past your bedtime. If
And
anyone's still watching, I appreciate it. So
I'm Central Time, so I still got like an hour on them. But
you're fine. You're fine.
so, what would you, if you could like go back in time, what would you tell like a 10-year-old version of yourself?
Oh God. Hmm. I mean, there's probably some like more important things that I could say, or more uplifting things that I could say. Like I'm human just like everyone, and I had, you know, it during my teenage years, and the whole. It's kind of a cliche, but it does get better. you know, there's a lot of cool shit that we, all get to do once we kind of become adults and realize that all the petty crap that bogs us down as teenagers is really not a thing. um but probably tell myself that. I feel like everyone would tell themselves that. I don't know. I guess I'd tell myself to stick to my passions and follow them. I admittedly I started playing guitar at a pretty young age and gave up on it um when I was like 15, because like any teenager, it wasn't coming easy to me. I had to practice. Like, who wants to do that? um I picked it up again in my 20s, and it's been one of the most kind of rewarding and stimulating things creatively in my life. I've met some amazing people through music. I've got to see and do some really cool stuff. I played some cool festivals. One of the coolest things I've ever done in my life was a 2-week tour of Cuba with one of my bands, which I never, would have gotten to do if I had not, stuck with it. And same thing with wrestling. Like, there was lots of periods of time where I just kind of fell off, and admittedly, I never expected any of this to happen. So some of the coolest things I've gotten to do, some of the most amazing people that I've met, places that I've seen, people that I love, have come from this. And so even when things are hard, you got to stick with them sometimes.
Now, a 2-week tour of Cuba?
Yes.
I'm sorry, wait. You can't just like gloss over that with me.
It's
How does that even occur?
a bit of a long story. I have tweeted about it. I have spoken about it on other podcasts. Not that I'm
Okay.
saying listen to other podcasts, but
Okay.
a friend of mine from up here in the Northwest, his name is Ethan HD. He's an amazing wrestler from Tacoma, Washington, and he has a really good podcast called Going Home Early, which is focused specifically on traveling and wrestlers traveling. That's what the whole premise of the podcast is. So I do tell the entire story on my episode of his show from a couple months ago. But just to kind of give you a kind
Yeah,
of
give me like the short and condensed
a
version.
broad understanding of it. Yeah, 9 of us from up here in Vancouver, we traveled to Cuba for 2 weeks. Not only did we play, I think 7 or 8 shows on the island all over the country, um, but we also brought around $5,000 worth of equipment, most of which we got through crowdsourcing, through donations, through buying via used means, or all of us brought older stuff that we no longer had use for, guitars, drums, all the hardware, the things that intangibles you wouldn't think about, guitar strings, guitar picks. If I break a guitar string, I can go to the store tomorrow and get one. But in Cuba, it's a little bit harder. All the hardware for the drums, the nuts, the bolts, everything, right? We played a 2-week tour of shows with Cuban bands, with us providing all of the equipment and the back line, because that's something that they don't really have readily available to them. Obviously, the cost of things are kind of um, uh, it's out of a lot of people's means on that island. Like the average income of the average Cuban is like 50 US a month. Um, and so, they can't afford, nice equipment a lot of the time. Also, there's the whole embargo thing, which has made trade with the United States not so easy. The reason why we're able to do it is Canada doesn't have the same kind of relationship with Cuba that the United States does. And actually, after the fall of the Soviet Union and their ties to Cuba in the early 90s, what helped get Cuba out of their economic deficit was tourism, specifically from Europeans and from Canadians. So there are a lot of Canadians who will go to Cuba on vacation, like an American would go to an all-inclusive in Mexico. That's something that is very standard for us. Um, so we were able to make connections with a nonprofit society in Cuba who specifically work with like the arts and culture kind of like branch of the government. And they're able to get us work visas to come in and do everything by the book. And then we also bring all the equipment with us. And then after the 2 weeks are done, we left all $5,000 worth of gear, which is definitely not by the book. Don't tell the Cuban government that we did that. And so that they're able to have a community and a scene that's can sustain itself because they have access to better gear and people can, that's something that they can grow and build upon is via music. So yeah, that was in December of 2017, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, hands down.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Like, do you think about like who has like your gear now and like where it's gone since you've left it there?
The coolest thing, I mean, we have a friend who we still have contact with who kind of he stores it all and sort of he kind of almost like rents it out. And I mean, not for money, but like he kind of is the keeper of it all, sort of thing.
Like a
Um,
music gear library?
Exactly. That's a nice way of looking at it. So it's all based in a city called Sancti Spiritus, which is really central in Cuba. It's like right dead in the middle of the island. It's also a 500-year-old city, which puts us in the Western world like, oh, that's wild to think about things like that. Like we played venues like they'd be like, oh yeah, this was built in 1850, and we're playing a show in it, and it's like that's crazy. Um, they also, because we're playing like punk music and hardcore and metal and stuff, they specifically asked if we could bring a Marshall amplifier, like please do. And so we managed to track down like a relatively inexpensive like Marshall, um, like a full half stack that we brought with us, which has to easily be the loudest thing on that island. Like there can't be like there are musicians who obviously play in bars. There are a lot of expats there who would play. Like we specifically went by. There's a Beatles themed bar in Cuba, so that sort of stuff exists. Music exists obviously in that country, but like no one's playing a friggin' Marshall half stack in that country. They don't have any use for it. So um, yeah, there's actually a very funny picture that I can send you of us playing in the streets with the Marshall, and someone just has their baby sitting on the Marshall with like no headphones or no nothing, and it's just like this poor child probably went deaf, like sitting and watching us play. But yeah, anyways,
That's awesome. Sorry, I got so sidetracked.
no,
This
it's
is so
okay.
intriguing. So, a specific Val Pancakes question. How do you normally enjoy your pancakes?
Good question. I had some very good pancakes when I was in Seattle. So before I flew to Tampa, I was in Seattle for a week. My girlfriend lives in Seattle. And so I was spending some time with her, and we went to this amazing vegetarian restaurant called Cafe Flora. It's in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. And we had some pancakes that had, it was like a citrus butter and some blood orange segments on it, as well as like a fancy um, pistachio crumble and some warm maple syrup. So I don't always have pancakes that fancy, but those were like among the top tier pancakes that I've ever had. Admittedly, I am Canadian, and so I can be really picky when it comes to. I've been to lots of restaurants in the States where they advertise that their pancakes or waffles or French toast or whatever comes with maple syrup, and they give you shitty old like generic table syrup that is 100% not maple syrup. And so if you're gonna give me maple syrup, I am a Canadian. You better be giving me the real thing. So I like a fruit compote, or like your chocolate chip pancakes or your blueberry pancakes, whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have syrup, it's going to get dry. And so, yeah, butter and maple syrup above all else, those are necessary evils for sure.
I just assumed that Canadians all had their own secret stash of maple syrup that they carry with them everywhere. Is this not the case?
This is not the case. It's like really cheap at the grocery store. Like it's really readily available here. Like good stuff is readily available here. So yeah, that's not an issue. I mean, it's probably in every Canadian's fridge. I have some in my fridge, but like, yeah, I don't carry it with me. I couldn't get it through customs either, right? You can't carry liquids on planes like that. So
You have to carry like a what, like half
I would
ounce
have to
bottle
I
of
would
it.
have to check a bag just to bring some maple syrup with me. So
And then I'm gonna set like a scene for you. So like you're feeling snacky, and you're like, I want to go get some cookies, and you're like walking down the grocery aisle, and you land, and you're like, you know what, Oreo cookies. That's what I'm gonna go for. Do you go for like a single stuffed Oreo cookie, or do you go for like a double stuffed Oreo cookie?
yeah, the double stuff I think is too much stuff. Um, Admittedly, I'm intrigued by all like Oreos have just like since I was a child have gone like bonkers. Like there's so many different kinds of Oreos, and I'm definitely someone who appreciates variety when it comes to snacks. So I want to try the new stuff. So yeah, single stuff for sure, and like give me your fancy Oreos. Like I tried the new like Brookie Oreos that they have. Um, they're really fucking good. So um, yeah, so single stuff and give me a fancy Oreo. Like I'll have a regular Oreo as well. That's quite all right too. Um, Not huge on the golden Oreos, but yes, fancy Oreos, single stuff all day.
So that's all the questions I have, but I don't know if Chuck or Christopher have any questions from
Oh,
chat.
we got a bunch of questions from the chat.
Can we
So
lightning round them, Chuck? Is that something we can do?
yes, we can lightning round them. So Reed H. Cooper says, is Thatcher still your greatest opponent that you've had in the past 2 years? You kind of answered that before.
Has to be. He's someone I could work with every single day and like not have to think about it. We think very similarly, and like full admission, we've had matches before where we didn't say a single word to one another when we were in the ring together. We literally just went out there and did it. So yes, 100%.
That's awesome. I have a question.
Yes.
You had a couple of matches in Mania Week. What was your favorite one to be a part of?
From this past Mania Week.
This past Mania Week, yep.
Without a question. I mean, all three of them were good. Jaden Newman is a nice up and coming wrestler out of the Chattanooga area. I was happy to work with him. That 8-man tag was very cool. Getting to work with so many like amazing independent wrestlers from when I was watching and kind of coming up, like a lot of ex-Chikara guys. That was amazing. But without a doubt, it's the Eric Royal match. It was supposed to happen twice before, both in New Jersey in 2019 for Mania, and then 2020 Tampa. Full admission, if the Eric Royal match isn't on the table, I don't even bother to go to Tampa this past April. Like, and that was brought to my attention by Action and Sup that, hey, we want to make this match finally happen. That's when I seriously look at how much of a pain in the ass it was for me to get to Tampa. But I made it a reality because that match was on the table. So
nice. And all three matches were awesome.
Thank you. Yes.
No problem. Vic Sage has a gear question. Is there a wrestler's gear that you admire or envy out there?
Oh, I mean, this is maybe a little close to home because I already admitted that he's a friend of mine, but like I really like Kevin Ku's gear. He has like his his colors and his patterns. It's very simple and basic like mine. It's just kind of tights and kick pads and knee pads. But actually, sometimes he doesn't wear knee pads because he's a lunatic. But yeah, like him and Dom for their match against Finjuice this past Mania weekend, they got some brand new like kind of teal and black matching gear that I thought looked really spot on. So yeah, I like their stuff for sure.
Nice. Another gear question from Reed. Have you considered not wearing a soccer shirt and maybe a singlet?
No. I've had people suggest getting a singlet made to look like a soccer shirt, but like built into the actual tights themselves. That's an idea that I've considered. Two things. One, I'm definitely not at a point, like really not now, because COVID has not been good to me. I'm really not at a point where I feel comfortable wrestling without the shirt on. But two, I'm the only person who wrestles in a soccer shirt, and that sets me apart. And I don't plan on changing that. So
Definitely. Okay, I got two questions from the CEO of Action Wrestling, Matt Griffin. He wants to
Yes.
know, what is your current Tetris record?
Oh, okay. So those playing along at home, I am a hardcore NES Tetris, the original 1989 version for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Nice.
And where are my records? Just looking them up. Admittedly, I've kind of plateaued a little bit, unfortunately. So like the maximum score on NES Tetris is 999999, and then it can't go above that. And the highest level that you can do before it gets like bonkers to be able to play is level 29. Previously, anything higher than level 29 was believed to be unplayable. There are now people who can play above level 29. I think there's someone who's gone all the way to level 34, which
That's
is
crazy.
insane. I've gone to level 29 7 times, and my top score that I've ever had on NES Tetris is 690,000 ish. So, like world class players are in like the 800 900 range, no problem. The World Championships of Tetris are in Portland, Oregon, which I mentioned previously is only about a 6-hour drive for me. So one of my goals was to one day qualify for that. But like I said, I've kind of plateaued in my ability. I don't think I'll ever qualify, but one of these days I would like to go just as a spectator. So
That would be awesome to see. Matt also wants to know, how does it feel to be on everyone's wish list to wrestle?
that's actually really humbling. That's like super humbling. Like, I mean, you guys all saw I've got a huge wish list of people that I'd like to wrestle, but the fact that there's so many, I mean, there's a lot of peers, a lot of people who have similar levels of experience or slightly less experience than me who, will name drop me as someone they want to wrestle. There's so many people who are like new or young, up and coming, and the fact that people actually look up to me and reach out to me for advice and reach out and say like, hey, I would love to wrestle you one day, and there was multiple people that I met in Tampa this past go around who came up to me and were like, holy shit, are you Daniel Makabe? Like, I've always wanted to meet you. I'd love to wrestle you. That's so humbling. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I'm I'm human. I've got a chip on my shoulder. I've got a bit of an ego. You kind of have to if you want to get really good at something. But like those are the moments where you sort of go, Jesus Christ, like really? Like me? Like that's amazing, honestly. And anyone who wants to wrestle me, I mean, I'm up for the challenge. I'd love to wrestle you. So
Okay, we got two music questions.
okay.
Reed asks, 2021 music recommendations, what are they? Because as he says, you have very good taste.
Oh, that's easy. There's been a couple records that came out this year that I love already. The new Julian Baker record is amazing. It came out at the end of February. There's a new Mogwai record, who are a Scottish post-rock band that have been around forever. It's called As the Love Continues. It's really good. There's a new Godspeed You Black Emperor record that came out at the beginning of April. And for anyone playing along at home, my entrance music is a song called Providence by Godspeed You Black Emperor, who are an amazing post-rock band from Montreal, Quebec. And then probably my favorite album to come out in 2021 is by a British band called Black Country New Road, and they're a 7-piece kind of post-rock band. I referenced, when we were talking about my favorite albums of all time, I referenced Slint's Spiderland as being my second favorite record of all time. Black Country New Roads have a record out called For the First Time. It came out in February, and it's not only does it got like serious Slint vibes, but they actually reference Slint in one of the songs. But yeah, it's like a 7-piece kind of post-rock with elements of jazz and
Nice.
like with a smash. It is easily my favorite record to come out this year. But there's a bunch of stuff that I can go on beyond that. But yeah, there's a few things for you.
That's a whole nother podcast. That's part 2.
For sure.
I have a question. You being
Yes.
a musician, what is your favorite song to play?
Oh, that's not one of my own. Let me see. What is my favorite song to play? Sometimes I just like I have like my staples that me and my drummer can kind of play together. Because he's someone that I've played in multiple bands with. So like I'd rather just play something that's relatively easy and maybe I can actually sing and play at the same time. Like we'll play Guided by Voices songs together. We'll play White Stripe songs together. What's my favorite song to play? Trying to think, what else have we knocked out? Honestly, playing that Slint song for that promo, although it was a pain in the ass to get it nailed down, that felt really good once we got it. Yeah, I don't know. I like playing stuff that's loud and fast too. Like when the other thing, when we went on that Cuban tour in 2017, in addition to my own band playing, like there were members of all the individual bands who did. We closed out every night with like a set of like classic punk and hardcore covers. So we played the Misfits and Ramones. We played Black Flag songs. We played Bad
Nice.
Brain songs. We'd play songs by Agnostic Fronts. We played songs by the Cro-Mags. So, and I actually got to do vocals for that band, which is not something I'm particularly great at, but it was like super fun just to be like, I don't know, it's kind of like punk rock, like summer camp, being like, just play all your favorite hardcore songs and you can shout them. And if you don't do a good job, well, like everyone's having a good time anyway.
There you go. Okay, 2 more questions. One,
Yes.
you talked about your love for coffee. Do you have another favorite beverage other than coffee?
Oh, all I've been drinking lately is water, but that's not it. What do I like other than coffee that I will? You know what? I don't have it very often because I try not to drink like liquid sugar, but just like on a hot day, like I don't drink like alcohol, but on a hot day, like a really nice cold like vanilla Coke
Oh,
is just like it hits the spot. You know what I'm saying?
I gotcha. I hear you on that one.
Hmm.
Last question is, of course, from me. Being a hockey fan, you being from Canada, you mentioned hockey a little bit earlier. Did you have a favorite team? Did you follow anybody growing up? And are you interested in seeing the new Seattle Kraken when they start playing?
I was more of a hockey fan as a kid than I am now, admittedly. Like I was the right age when the Canucks made their Stanley Cup run in '94, They lost to the New York Rangers that year.
Damn the Rangers. We hate them on this podcast.
We had a riot. And then we lost again in 2011 to the Boston Bruins, and we had a riot. So Vancouver does not have a good history of being good losers whatsoever. Admittedly, Vancouver sports fans kind of suck. So yeah, growing up, like I was a Canucks fan. Admittedly, I kind of liked Anaheim when they came into the league because of the Mighty Ducks movies, and I was of that age. But no, it was all about Vancouver. I mean, it was the right era. We had like a really good team in the 90s. We had Pavel Bure, we had Alexander McGillney, Trevor Linden, Kirk McLean in net, who was a world-class keeper. And so, yeah, I definitely grew up as a Canucks guy. And you know what? I've got friends in Seattle who are really amped for the Kraken. And like I said, my girlfriend's in Seattle, so I fully expect us to go to a Kraken game for sure. In fact, nice. When I was in Seattle a couple weeks ago, I drove by the stadium, and they're under full renovations to get that thing up and running for, I don't know, are they supposed to start next fall?
I believe so. Yeah, they're
in September.
Yep, their draft is coming up in a month.
October. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, no, I'll go see a Kraken game. Admittedly, Canucks games got to the point where when the Canucks were good in like the 2010s, it was the most unaffordable thing you could do in Vancouver. Like if you wanted to go to a Canucks game, you weren't getting in the door for less than $100 each. Even now, the Canucks are a terrible team. And prior to COVID, you're not getting in the door for less than like $60-$70. And I don't like hockey that much to spend that kind of money on it. And admittedly, I already have seasons tickets for the Vancouver Whitecaps. So
there you go. Val, that's all I got. Back to you.
Well, that is all I got. I don't have anything to contribute to hockey talk. I'm a baseball girl.
That's
so.
Okay. I am too. I'm a lifelong Seattle Mariners fan, and I can't wait. I mean, they're playing in the stadium. I was in Seattle when they had opening weekend against San Francisco, but I'm not quite at the point where I'm ready to get into a baseball stadium. Maybe once I get vaccinated, I will look at that as an option, but I miss going to baseball games. We've got a short season single A team here in Vancouver, who are the Vancouver Canadians. They're a single A team for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Toronto Blue Jays. And so, yeah, I love going to baseball games, single A games here in Vancouver or major league games in Seattle. So
I'm a Yankees fan, but we have
there must be some kind of minor league team in Omaha though.
There's I don't know if it's a single A or double A, but I think they're the Storm Chasers now, but they're for the farm team for the Royals.
That makes sense. So yep.
Yeah, so I do like going to games when there are games to go to, and it's so cheap, and it's just like throwaway
100%,
night,
100%. Yep.
Well, then that is all I have. This has been The Stack. I am, as always, ValPancakes. This has been Daniel Makabe. Please follow him on all social media outlets, and make sure to catch up on his completely stellar matches from Mania Weekend on IWTV. Where can people find you as far as Twitter, Instagram? I don't know if you have TikTok, like whatever. Plug your socials.
I'm nearly 40, so I definitely don't have TikTok. I do have Instagram and Twitter. Both are at Daniel Makabe, Daniel Makabe. Follow me there. That's where you're going to find out about the next time that I'm wrestling, or if I'm going to plug anything I've done cool in the past. Most of my matches you can find on YouTube or IWTV. I've wrestled quite a bit for WXW, so they've got a really stellar streaming service, WXW Now, that you can find some matches on. I'm even on the WWE Network, or I was until they blew that thing up, which is wild. But And yeah, follow me on social media. I post daily music recommendations. So that's a good spot to keep up if you're in a rut or you need something new to listen to, or maybe just a reminder of something you haven't listened to in a while. And yeah, other than that, yeah, that's the best way to keep up with me. I genuinely appreciate you guys asking me to be a part of this, and this was a lot of fun. And like I said, sorry that I just talked for the last 2 hours, but there you go.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it with me. I certainly appreciate you being on tonight, and thank you all for joining us. I hope everyone has a delightful evening.
Thank you.